Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best AD carries for Season 5, Patch 5.2. So let's get right into the video. At the number 5 spot, I have Draven. Pros to Draven he's got crazy damage come late game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he is the highest damage AD carry in the game if he can catch his Qs. He's also a pretty strong laner because of the damage on his Q, and he's got self-peel with the speed buff on his W and with the knockback on his E. His ultimate is very versatile as well. You can either use it to finish off low health targets, you can use it to get AoE damage off in teamfights, or you can even use it to wave clear if need be. And he also snowballs really hard because of his passive. Cons to Draven he is a higher skill cap AD carry. If you haven't played Draven before, then I'd definitely recommend playing him in some normals and get used to catching his Qs, because if you can't catch your Q on Draven, then you're missing out on a lot of his damage and you just might as well play a different AD carry. However, if you can catch your Qs consistently, then he does do a load of damage, and he does also have weaker mobility compared to some of the other AD carries. Next up on my list, I have Corki. Pros to Corki he's got great poke with his ultimate and with his Q. He's also got a very strong mid-game power spike because when he picks up the Trinity Force, the item synergizes really well with him, and he's going to start to do a load of damage once he picks up that item. He's also got a long-range gap closer on his W, which makes him one of the safest AD carries in the game, and I'm pretty sure it can go over any wall in the game, so you can get out of a lot of sticky situations with his W. He's also a pretty strong tower pusher because he gets the Sheen procs with the Trinity Force, and he also does true damage. And the recent nerf to Infinity Edge really doesn't hurt him at all because he does rush Trinity Force. Cons to Corki he is quite mana hungry in the early game now. This recent patch, or patch 5.1, he got a nerf to his W where it now costs 100 mana instead of 50, and this is a pretty big nerf if you think about it, because say if you use 2 Qs and then you W away, you're basically going to be out of mana because you only start with, I think, 300 mana as Corki in the early game, and this definitely does hurt his early laning. So this is why he isn't higher up on my list, because if you use 2 of your Qs and then you W away, you're basically going to be out of mana. And he is also skill shot reliant with his ultimate and with his Q. Next up on my list, I have Jinx. Pros to Jinx she's got long range with her Q, which makes her a pretty strong laner. She's also a great tower pusher because of the passive on her Q. Arguably the best tower pushing AD carry in the game. She's also got a great late game, and she's a pretty strong team fighter as well. If you can get a couple, or if you can get a kill in a team fight as Jinx, then you're going to proc her passive, and it's going to be very hard for the enemies to kill Jinx in team fights because of that. She's also got very strong CC for an AD carry with her W and with her E. It enables her to provide some pretty good self-peel for herself, because if the enemies are trying to engage on her, she can just drop down her E. Once her E runs out, she can use her W, and she can kite champions really hard because of those CC abilities. Her ultimate is also very strong. If you need to finish off a low health target, you can use it. And recently I was playing Jinx. I'm pretty sure I got 3 kills just by using her ultimate across the map. Say the enemy top laner is low, you can use your ultimate and pick up some pretty nice kills in the early game because of her ultimate. Cons to Jinx she doesn't have any mobility. So next up on my list, I have Sivir. Pros to Sivir her E is really OP right now. So not only does it block the first ability, it blocks the damage of the first ability, and it also blocks the CC effect of the first ability, but it also blocks all damage for the duration of the E. So the E is only supposed to block like 1 damage or 1 spell and 1 like CC effect if that spell has a CC effect, but right now what it's doing is for the full duration of the E, it's blocking all the damage. So for example, if you're playing Sona against Sivir, if you use your Q and then you use your auto attack after the Q, it's going to block your Q and your auto attack. So right now it's blocking basically more damage and more CC than it's supposed to, which is a pretty big bug, and I'm pretty sure Riot's going to fix this soon, but right now it's making her a pretty strong pick. She also counters pretty much all CC supports in the game because of her E, and she's got great wave clear because of her Q and because of her W. She's got really strong poke in lane as well because of her Q, and her ultimate is one of the strongest abilities for solo queue in my opinion, because you can use it in so many situations. You can use it to find picks on the opponents, you can use it to engage, you can use it to disengage, so it's a very useful ability. And she's also got an attack speed steroid on her W, so this makes her a pretty strong tower pusher, and it also enables her to trade pretty well in the early game. A con to Sivir is that she's shorter range than most AD carries in the game, so you have to be careful about your positioning in teamfights with her, especially if your E and your ultimate are not off cooldown. So number 1 on my list for patch 5.2 is Graves. Prosta Graves he's arguably the best laner in the game. He's got so much burst damage, and when he hits level 6, no other AD carry in the game can compare to how much burst he has. He's also got great mobility with his E, and he's got relatively low mana costs. For example, Corki's W, which is his gap closer, costs 100 mana, and Graves' gap closer only costs 50 mana. And he is the tankiest AD carry in the game because of his passive. A con to Graves is that he is weaker if he falls behind. Some honorable mentions for this patch include Caitlyn, Ezreal, Kalista, Vayne, Lucian, and Tristana. So Caitlyn is definitely one of the easier AD carries to pick up on, so if you're starting out as an AD carry, or if you're just looking to play an easier one, then I definitely recommend picking up Caitlyn, because she's got a pretty strong early game and it's hard to zone her because of her Q and because of her very long auto attack range. So I definitely recommend picking up Caitlyn if you're newer to the role. Ezreal is definitely a little bit harder to play because he's very skill shot reliant with his Q. If you can't land your Q consistently as Ezreal, then you're going to be missing out on a lot of his damage. His ultimate is also a skill shot. However, if you are good at landing skill shots, then he's definitely a very rewarding champion, and he's got a pretty strong early game as well. His ultimate can be used in so many situations. For example, you can use it to clear waves, you can use it to finish off low health targets, so it's kind of like a Draven ultimate in that sense. And he's also got his E, which is really strong for escaping. Kalista is definitely one of the harder AD carries on the list. She's pretty hard to play because of her passive. I'm seeing a lot of Kalista players just going into ranked not knowing how to use her passive and then just dying because they have no clue what they're doing. So I definitely recommend playing her in normals and getting used to her passive before you go into ranked with her, because if you do know how to use her passive correctly, then she is a very strong pick. And Vayne is definitely one of the harder AD carries to play in the game as well. Kalista, Ezreal, and Vayne are like up there when it comes to how hard of an AD carry they are. Vayne definitely has a weaker early game, but if you can get past the early game, or if you can even get some kills in the early game, then she scales really well into the late game, and she's just a monster once you get your full items on her. So definitely pick up Vayne if you're looking for a little bit more mechanically intensive AD carry. Don't expect to just start wrecking with Vayne in your first few games. I think I've played like 40 or 50 games with Vayne in Season 4, and I'm still not very good on her, so it's going to take you a while to get good with Vayne if you're not used to her. Lucian is still a pretty strong AD carry in my opinion, despite all of the nerfs he's got recently. His double shot passive got nerfed, his W no longer has an attack damage ratio on it. His ultimate's cooldown got increased a while ago. So he's been nerfed a lot, but I still think he's a pretty good pick. The Braum Lucian lane is still really strong, so if you haven't tried that out, then I definitely recommend it. And he's also got good mobility with his E as well. And Tristana is definitely one of the better late game AD carries. She scales really well, and she's also got good mobility with her W and self peel with her ultimate. She does have a weaker early game though, which is why she's not on my top 5. But if you can get past the early game and get to late game as her, then she starts to do a load of damage. So that is all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in my next video.